The transport shuttle lurched violently as it broke through Doretho 6's atmosphere, throwing Alex Mercer against his safety harness. Around him, elite warriors from a dozen different species barely flinched at the turbulence. Alex, on the other hand, was trying very hard not to throw up. "Steady descent achieved," announced the pilot, a crystalline being whose voice resonated like wind chimes. "Landing in 3 minutes. Prepare for deployment." Alex wiped sweat from his forehead and checked his standard-issue survival pack for the 100th time. How had a logistics coordinator from Earth ended up here, among the Galactic Alliance's most elite survival training candidates? The paperwork, mix-up 3 days ago, still made his head spin. By the time anyone realized the error, the transport had already left the station, and apparently, turning back would have been administratively inconvenient. "Human," a harsh voice clicked from his left. "Try not to die in the first hour. It would reflect poorly on your species." Alex turned to see Ralith, the squad leader. The Voxan warrior resembled a nightmarish fusion of scorpion and praying mantis, standing 8 feet tall with chitin armor that gleamed like polished obsidian. 4 arms ended in razor-sharp claws, and compound eyes regarded Alex with undisguised contempt. "I'll do my best," Alex replied, trying to keep his voice steady. A musical laugh came from across the aisle. "Don't mind Ralith," said Sorrel, the team's medic. "He says that to everyone." The trellis healer's appearance was far less intimidating than their leader's. Her head resembled a lotus flower in full bloom, with delicate pink petals that shifted color with her emotions. Currently, they were a soothing lavender. "He's never said it to me," growled Drex from the back of the shuttle. The young Karvok warrior looked like someone had carved a soldier from granite and given it teeth. His gray skin was covered in ritual scars, and his 4 eyes narrowed as he looked at Alex. "Then again, I'm not a soft, weak human who probably can't even lift a plasma rifle." Alex bit back a retort. He'd learned over the past 3 days that arguing with Drex was like trying to reason with a particularly aggressive boulder. The shuttle touched down with a teeth-rattling impact. The cargo doors hissed open, revealing a landscape that looked like nature's fever dream. Purple grass stretched to the horizon, interrupted by twisted trees with crystalline bark that refracted the binary sun's light into rainbow patterns. The air smelled of ozone and something sickeningly sweet. "Listen up!" Ralith's voice cut through the squad's murmurs. "This is survival training at its purest. For the next 30 days, we prove ourselves worthy of the Alliance's trust. No rescue, no support, no—" A sharp crack interrupted him. The supply containers at the shuttle's rear suddenly erupted in green flames. The squad scattered as the fire spread with unnatural speed, consuming their food supplies in seconds. "Chemical reaction," Sorrel shouted, her petals flashing alarm red. The preservation units weren't calibrated for this atmosphere. Within minutes, nothing remained of their month's worth of rations but smoking slag. The shuttle pilot, following strict training protocols, was already lifting off. "Good luck, candidates," the crystalline being chimed. "See you in 30 days." As the shuttle disappeared into the alien sky, Ralith surveyed the damage. His mandibles clicked in what Alex was learning to recognize as extreme irritation. "Well," the Voxan said, "this complicates things." "Complicates?" Drex snarled. "We have no food, nothing." "Correct," Ralith confirmed, "and as per regulations, no technology usage for the first 5 days. We must prove we can survive with only our natural abilities." He gestured at the alien landscape with 2 of his 4 arms. "We find food here, or we starve." The squad spread out across their landing site, a clearing surrounded by the bizarre crystalline trees. Alex watched as his teammates began their search for sustenance. Ralith used his impressive height to scan the tree canopy. Drex smashed open fallen logs, looking for grubs or insects. Surreal carefully examined various plants, her medical training helping her identify potentially toxic compounds. Alex, meanwhile, knelt by a patch of the purple grass and really looked at it. The blades were thick, almost succulent. He rubbed one between his fingers and sniffed. It smelled like asparagus, mixed with mint. "What are you doing?" "Human," Drex demanded, looming over him. "Praying to your weak earth gods?" "Just checking something," Alex murmured. He plucked a blade of grass, examined it carefully, then put it in his mouth and chewed. The effect was immediate. Every member of the squad stopped what they were doing and stared at him in horror. "He's eating the ground cover," someone whispered. "Suicide on the first day," another muttered. "Typical human." But Alex didn't die. He didn't even feel sick. The grass tasted like a cross between spinach and cucumber, with a slight peppery aftertaste. "Not bad, actually." "Huh," he said, swallowing. "Need salt." Sorrel rushed over, her medical scanner already out before remembering the technology ban. "You can't just eat random plants. The toxins could—" "Could what?" Alex asked, plucking another handful. "I'm still standing. Look, where I come from, we have this thing called foraging. Humans have been doing it for hundreds of thousands of years. Your primitive ancestors also died from poisoning regularly," Ralith pointed out. "True," Alex agreed, "but the ones who survived passed on their knowledge. And I spent 3 summers working at a wilderness survival camp." He held up the grass. "This has all the signs of being edible. Bright color usually means photosynth. I mean, it makes energy from light. No waxy coating, no bitter smell, no numbing sensation on the tongue." The squad watched in horrified fascination as Alex continued grazing. When he didn't immediately collapse, they reluctantly returned to their own searches. By evening, the contrast was stark. The elite warriors sat in a dejected circle, having found nothing they deemed safe to eat. Alex had a small pile of purple grass, some roots he'd dug up that looked like neon carrots, and what appeared to be glowing blue cucumbers he'd found growing on a vine. "This is insane," Drex groaned, his usual bravado replaced by the hollow tone of hunger. "We're the galaxy's finest, and we're being outlasted by a logistics clerk who eats weeds." Alex looked up from where he was arranging stones in a circle. "Want some?" he offered, holding out a handful of grass. The warriors recoiled as if he'd offered them poison. "I'll stick to proper food." "Thanks," Ralith said stiffly. "When we find some, suit yourself." Alex shrugged. He'd gathered dried plant matter during the day and now used the focused sunlight through a curved piece of crystal bark to start a fire. The smoke was purple, which was weird, but it seemed to work like regular fire. As his squad mates watched, Alex wrapped the neon carrots in broad leaves and buried them in the coals. He skewered the blue cucumbers on sticks and held them over the flames. The smell that wafted through the camp was actually pretty good. "You're cooking them?" Cyril asked, professional curiosity overcoming caution. "Heat breaks down a lot of toxins," Alex explained. "Plus, it makes nutrients easier to digest. Basic human survival stuff." "Barbaric," Ralith muttered. But Alex noticed the Varxen's compound eyes tracked the roasting vegetables with intense focus. Night fell like a purple curtain across the alien sky. 2 moons rose, casting everything in an eerie violet glow. The squad huddled together for warmth, their advanced suits providing little comfort without power. Alex kept the fire going and munched on his roasted vegetables. They weren't bad. The blue cucumbers had a sweet, almost melon-like flavor when cooked. "How?" Drex finally asked, his voice small in the darkness. "How can you just eat random things?" Alex poked at the fire with a stick. "My grandmother lived through a famine on Earth. She taught me that in hard times. You learn what the land provides. Dandelions, kudzu, plantain, what most people call weeds, are often the most nutritious plants. But this isn't Earth, Sorrel pointed out. No, Alex agreed. But life is life. Plants that grow fast and spread wide, like this grass, usually aren't investing energy in complex poisons. They're too busy growing. By the second day, the situation was becoming critical. The warriors had found nothing they considered safe. Ralith had tried eating bark. His species could digest cellulose, but the crystalline trees gave him what he described as the worst headache in the galaxy. Drex attempted to catch some small flying creatures, but they dissolved into foul-smelling goo when killed. Surreal found some promising berries that turned out to have a paralytic effect, leaving her unable to move her petals for 3 hours. Alex, meanwhile, was expanding his menu. He'd discovered that the purple grass made a decent tea. The neon carrot things were actually better raw, with a crisp texture like jicama. He found mushroom-like growths that glowed softly in the shade. After careful testing, these proved to have a pleasant, nutty flavor. "This is humiliating," Drex moaned on the morning of day 3. The proud warrior was visibly weakening, his gray skin taking on an unhealthy pallor. "Reduced to watching a human eat weeds while we starve." "Then maybe you should try the weeds," Alex suggested, not unkindly. He was preparing what he'd started thinking of as alien salad. Purple grass, sliced mushrooms, and what looked like space dandelions he'd found near a stream. "Never," Ralith said, but his voice lacked its usual authority. The squad leader was moving slowly, his chitin dulling. For a species used to consuming massive amounts of protein, the lack of food was hitting hard. It was Surreal who broke first. That afternoon, as Alex roasted more vegetables, the medic approached hesitantly. If I were to try some of your foraged food," she said quietly, "what would you recommend?" Alex smiled and offered her a piece of roasted blue cucumber. "Try this. It's the mildest thing I've found." Sorrel took the offering with trembling hands. Her petals shifted through a rainbow of nervous colors as she bit into it. The entire squad watched, holding their breath. "It's actually good," she said, wonder in her voice. "Sweet, pleasant. I don't feel any adverse effects." "Give it a few minutes," Alex advised. "But I've been eating them for 3 days now with no problems." Word of Cyril's survival spread through the camp like wildfire. By evening, 2 more squad members had tentatively tried Alex's offerings. By the 4th day, desperation overcame pride for most of the rest. Only Ralith and Drex held out, but Alex could see them weakening. It was on the morning of the 5th day that everything went wrong. Alex woke to a sound like thunder mixed with breaking glass. The ground shook, and trees in the distance toppled like matchsticks. Something was coming, something big. "Defensive positions!" Ralith roared, but his warriors could barely stand, let alone fight. Days without proper nutrition had left them weak and disoriented. The creature that emerged from the forest defied description. It was like someone had combined a rhinoceros with a jellyfish and given it anger management issues. Translucent flesh rippled over a massive skeletal structure. 6 legs, each the size of a tree trunk, supported a body that had to weigh several tons. But worst of all were the tentacles, dozens of them, whipping through the air and secreting some kind of acid that hissed where it hit the ground. "Run!" someone screamed, but there was nowhere to go. The creature was between them and any meaningful cover. Alex's mind raced. In his foraging, he'd noticed something. One particular plant, a writhing vine with red leaves, was avoided by all the local wildlife. Even the insects gave it a wide berth. He'd carefully noted its location without getting too close. "Stay here," he shouted, then sprinted toward a cluster of rocks where he'd seen the vine growing. Behind him, the creature bellowed and gave chase, its tentacles reaching for him with disturbing intelligence. Alex dove, rolled, and came up with an armful of the red vine. The smell hit him immediately, like rotting meat mixed with sulfur. His eyes watered, and he fought the urge to vomit, but he turned and ran back toward the creature, waving the vine like a flag. The effect was instantaneous. The monster recoiled as if slapped. Its tentacles withdrew, and it made a sound like a broken foghorn. Alex advanced, gagging from the smell but keeping the vine held high. The creature backed away, then turned and fled, crashing back through the forest the way it had come. Alex dropped the vine and fell to his knees, dry heaving. When he finally looked up, the entire squad was staring at him in shock. "How?" Ralith asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Noticed. Nothing else? Would go near it." Alex gasped between breaths. "Figured. Predator might. Hate it too." Drex was on the ground, clutching his side where a tentacle had grazed him. The flesh was already reddening, acid burn spreading. Without thinking, Alex ran to his pile of foraged supplies. He grabbed a handful of broad leaves he'd been using as wrapping. They had a cooling sensation and a medicinal smell. "Let me," he said, kneeling beside Drex. The warrior was too weak to protest as Alex applied the leaves to the burn. The effect was immediate. The redness stopped spreading, and Drex's expression shifted from agony to relief. "The pain. It's fading," Drex said, wonder in his voice. Sorel examined the treatment with professional interest. "These leaves have antiseptic properties. How did you know?" "They grew near water and had no bite marks or damage," Alex explained. "In nature, medicine often protects itself by being useful to animals. They eat it when sick, so the plant spreads through their droppings." "You saved us," Cyril said quietly, with weeds in observation. Ralith stood slowly, his compound eyes fixed on Alex. Then, to everyone's shock, the proud Voxen warrior performed a gesture of deep respect, crossing all four arms over his chest and bowing his head. "Teach us," he said simply. The next weeks passed in a blur of learning. Alex taught his squad everything his grandmother had shown him, adapted for an alien world. How to identify edible plants by their growth patterns. How to test new foods safely, small amounts on the skin, then lips, then tongue, waiting between each step. How to combine foods for better nutrition. How to preserve food by drying, smoking, or fermentation. The squad learned that the purple grass could be woven into baskets when dried. The crystalline bark, when ground and mixed with water, made excellent containers that hardened in sunlight. The glowing mushrooms, it turned out, stayed luminescent even after picking, providing light without technology. Drex became Alex's most dedicated student, following him on foraging expeditions and asking endless questions. "On Karvok, we're taught that strength conquers all," he said one day, helping Alex dig for roots. "But you conquered through knowledge and humility." "Humans have a saying," Alex replied. "The mightiest oak can be felled by a storm, but grass bends and survives." Ralith proved surprisingly adept at preparing foods once he overcame his initial reluctance. His forearms made him incredibly efficient at processing plants. He even developed a few recipes of his own, including a soup made from tree sap that tasted remarkably like chicken broth. Sorel documented everything, creating a comprehensive guide to Durethel 6's edible plants. "This knowledge could save lives," she said. "How many training missions have failed because species couldn't adapt their diets?" By the time the 30 days ended, the squad was healthier than many who'd completed the training with full supplies. They'd built shelters from woven grass and mud brick. They had a varied diet of foraged foods. They'd even started cultivating some of the faster-growing plants near their camp. When the shuttle returned, the pilot's crystalline form actually flickered in surprise. "You appear to be thriving." "We had an excellent teacher," Ralith said, gesturing to Alex with 2 arms while carrying baskets of preserved food with the others. The journey back to the Alliance station was filled with animated discussion. Word of their survival method had somehow reached the instructors. and everyone wanted to know how a human logistics clerk had outthrived elite warriors. Alex was called to a debriefing immediately upon arrival. The conference room was packed with brass from every major Alliance species. At the head of the table sat Admiral Corva, a being that looked like a mixture of squid and aurora borealis. "Mr. Mercer." The Admiral's voice resonated directly in Alex's mind. "We've reviewed the surveillance footage from your training. Remarkable. Simply remarkable." "Thank you, sir." Alex wasn't sure if he was in trouble or not. "Tell me," the Admiral continued, "how did you end up in elite survival training?" Alex shifted uncomfortably. "There was a paperwork error. I'm supposed to be in logistics." "A paperwork error." The Admiral's form shifted through several colors that might have been amusement. "How fortuitous. Do you know what the failure rate for that particular training scenario is?" "No, sir." 70%, and that's with full supplies. Your group had no food and achieved a 100% survival rate. More than that, you established a sustainable colony. Murmurs rippled through the room. Alex caught fragments. Impossible. Human adaptability. Primitive techniques. "Here's what puzzles me," the Admiral continued. "According to our records, no Alex Mercer was ever registered for elite training. In fact, your assignment to that shuttle appears to be a complete anomaly in our system. Almost as if it were a test." Another voice finished. A human woman stepped from the shadows, wearing the insignia of Earth's diplomatic corps. "Hello, Alex. I'm Ambassador Sarah Chen. We've been watching you." Alex's mind reeled. "This was planned?" "Not exactly," Chen admitted. "The initial error was genuine, but when we saw where you ended up, we decided to let it play out. Earth has been trying to change perceptions about humans in the Alliance for years. Your performance has done more for our reputation than a decade of diplomacy." "What he means," Admiral Corva interjected, "is that the Alliance has radically reconsidered human classification. You're no longer listed as a Class C support species." "What are we now?" Alex asked. The Admiral's form rippled. "Pending, but I believe, Class A, approach with caution is being discussed. Any species that can look at random plants and think lunch is clearly more dangerous than we assumed." The debriefing continued for hours. They wanted to know everything, every plant Alex had tried, every technique he'd used, every observation he'd made. By the end, he was exhausted and just wanted to return to his quarters. As he left the conference room, he found Ralith, Drex, and Sorel waiting for him. "So," Ralith said, "we've been discussing your future." "My future?" "The Alliance wants to create a new training program," Sorel explained. "Traditional survival techniques to supplement our technology. They want you to lead it." Alex shook his head. "I'm just a logistics guy who knows about plants." "You're the human who taught elite warriors to eat weeds and like it." Drex corrected. "That's exactly what the galaxy needs." Alex considered for a moment. "I'll think about it." But he already knew his answer. A week later, he submitted his formal response to the Alliance's offer. It was a polite, detailed refusal. He explained, a different idea. 6 months later, Galactic Weeds and Fire launched across all Alliance networks. It wasn't military training or survival instruction. It was a cooking show. "Welcome, beings of all species," Alex said to the camera drone. "I'm Alex Mercer, and today we're going to learn how to make a delicious salad from things your homeworld considers pest plants." The show was an instant hit. Each episode featured Alex visiting a different planet, learning about local weeds from inhabitants, and creating dishes that made even the most skeptical species reconsider their definition of food. Ralith became a regular guest, demonstrating four-armed food preparation techniques. Sorel provided medical commentary on nutritional benefits. Drex, surprisingly, turned out to be a natural entertainer, providing comic relief as he learned to cook. "Today, we're on Voxen Prime," Alex said in one episode, standing in what looked like a desert made of glass. "The locals tell me nothing edible grows here, but look," he knelt by a small red plant. "This is desert bloom. Voxens think it's a weed, but watch what happens when we roast the seeds." The cultural impact was profound. Restaurants started featuring forage cuisine. Military training incorporated traditional survival techniques. Trade in previously ignored plants boomed as species discovered their weeds were other species' delicacies. But perhaps the most significant change was in how the galaxy viewed humans. No longer were they seen as weak, technology-dependent beings. Instead, they were recognized as adaptable, resilient, and slightly terrifying in their willingness to eat anything. "You know what the scariest thing about humans is?" Alex overheard a Karbok saying to his companion at a spaceport. "It's not their weapons or their ships. It's that if you dropped one naked on any planet with plants, they'd probably be running a restaurant within a week." The final episode of the first season was filmed on Darethil 6 at the site of Alex's survival training. The purple grass had been cultivated into neat rows. The glowing mushrooms grew in careful clusters. A permanent camp had been established, teaching survival skills to new recruits. "This is where it all started," Alex told the audience. "A paperwork error, a food shortage, and the realization that sometimes the most advanced survival technique is the oldest one. Pay attention to what grows around you." He knelt and plucked a blade of purple grass, just as he had that first desperate day. When civilization collapses, when technology fails, when everything seems lost, remember this. You don't need a plasma rifle. You don't need a quantum processor. You need knowledge, humility, and maybe a good pan. He looked directly at the camera. "The galaxy is full of food. We just call it weeds because we haven't learned to see it yet. So get out there, try something new, and remember, today's pest plant is tomorrow's gourmet meal." As the credits rolled, text appeared on screen. Since this episode aired, 17 species have reclassified pest plants as emergency food supplies. 3 major militaries have added foraging to basic training. And somewhere in the galaxy, a Voxen warrior is teaching a human marine how to make soup from tree bark. Galactic Weeds and Fire will return for Season 2. Underwater foraging. What's edible in the abyss? In his apartment on the station, Alex Mercer sat with his old squad, sharing a meal made from weeds gathered from 6 different worlds. The conversation was lively, filled with laughter and stories of their continued adventures. "You know," Ralith said, savoring a stuffed mushroom that would have horrified him months ago, "I used to think humans were weak because they needed tools for everything. Now I realize tools were just holding you back from your true potential." "Which is?" Alex asked. "Turning the entire galaxy into a buffet." Drex laughed. "Seriously, is there anything you won't try to eat?" "Haven't found it yet," Alex admitted. "Though there was this one fungus on Tertia 12 that smelled like gym socks marinated in fish sauce." "Did you eat it?" Cyril asked. "Made a great sauce once fermented." Alex grinned. "Sold the recipe to a Tertian chef for enough credits to fund the next 3 seasons. They laughed. And outside the viewport, stars wheeled in their ancient patterns. Somewhere among them were 1,000,000,000,000 worlds, each with its own definition of food and weeds. And on every one, life found a way to survive. "A toast," Ralith proposed, raising a glass of purple grass tea. "To the human who taught the galaxy's greatest warriors their most important lesson." "Which was?" Alex asked. "When in doubt," the squad said in unison, "eat the weeds." They drank. And in that moment, Alex thought of his grandmother. She'd survived famine by knowing which weeds to pick. And now, generations later, her knowledge was feeding the galaxy. He liked to think she would have been proud. Later that night, Alex received a message from Earth's government. It was a simple document, but it made him laugh out loud. He'd been officially reclassified from logistics coordinator to culinary ambassador. Attached was a note from Ambassador Chen. Consider this a promotion. Your grandmother's recipes are now matters of interstellar importance. Alex filed the document and went back to planning his next episode. Tomorrow, he was visiting a world where the inhabitants swore nothing grew but poisonous crystals. He'd already spotted 3 potentially edible lichens in the survey photos. The galaxy was vast, full of wonders and terrors and impossible challenges, but it was also full of life. And where there was life, there was something to eat. You just had to know how to look. And if civilization ever did collapse, if the great ships fell silent and the quantum processors went dark, Alex knew that somewhere in the ruins, someone would remember his show. They'd look at the weeds growing through the cracks in the permacrete and think, I wonder if that's edible. They'd try it, they'd survive, and eventually, they'd probably open a restaurant. Because that's what humans do. They adapt, they endure, and they turn even the humblest weed into a feast. In the end, that might be humanity's greatest contribution to the galaxy, not their technology or their ships or their weapons, but the simple, revolutionary idea that food is everywhere. You just have to be brave enough to chew. The stars continued their eternal dance, indifferent to the small revelations of the beings who lived among them. But in kitchens and camps and restaurants across 1,000 worlds, people were learning to see their world with new eyes, to spot the food hiding in plain sight, to survive not through force or technology, but through knowledge and courage and the willingness to try something new. And in a small apartment on an Alliance station, a human who'd never meant to be famous sat down to plan another episode of his cooking show, thinking about all the weeds waiting to be discovered. The galaxy had never tasted so good.